Hi, we're on Jesus TV this morning, giving you another episode of Suffer Well, Healed by His Stripes. And in this episode, we are going to be reading from Emmalee Powell's story. And Jonathan's going to take the lead on this. So, Jonathan, read to us the article that appeared in BYU, the Universe, one of their student newspapers.
Okay, trying to click on it, but it's not working. Let me figure out what's going on. Yeah, that's what I want. Okay. Okay, BYU student finds joy in the mess by painting Jesus. BYU student and artist Emmalee Powell has combated the idea that Jesus is reachable by battling through her desire to create the perfect image of Christ by producing over 340 abstract paintings of him instead. Powell said she has come to realize that Jesus is most present in people's lives when they are in a state of disarray, whether it be physical, emotional, or mental. She used personally imposed limitations during the art creation process to show that Jesus is here for everyone, not just perfect people living in perfect.
Go ahead, Jonathan.
Greg disappeared.
Okay, not just for sick people.
All right, I'll go back a little bit. She explained that through the New Testament, Jesus is never where things are pretty and nice. He is always in hard and difficult situations. For example, the time he spent ministering to the woman who was caught in adultery was not a comfortable situation, but he was there for her regardless of the circumstances. He's with the people who need him, and the people who need him are in a mess, Powell said. Powell used to be a realistic portrait painter and had always wanted to paint Jesus, but didn't know what he really looked like. Through her desire to paint him, she realized that no painting she ever attempted of him would be perfect. Because of this, she decided to purposefully give herself limitations by using only her non-dominant hand, not using a paintbrush or not painting how the picture would look. Powell's pictures have been created using paper towels, spoons, forks, pocket knives, carving tools, and sticks. She'll reach for anything but a paintbrush when it comes to painting Jesus. The exhibit is an interactive experience for viewers. Powell lays some small paintings of Jesus on a table and asks viewers to pick up the painting that they feel best fits the mess in their lives. Then write one or two words on the back that describe this mess. For Powell, the action of having observers interact with the art communicates that the idea that Jesus is untouchable is false. BYU student Austin Carter experienced the art for himself. It's not what I expected. All the paintings are different, and each face of Jesus provokes a different emotion, Carter said. Emotions are what Powell said drives her artwork. When she is stressed, overwhelmed, or doesn't know where to start, she strives to find Jesus through prayer. Most of this is all about started when you're stuck in a moment. Oh, goodness, I lost my place. 2 seconds. Most of this is all about getting started when you're stuck in a moment of indecision. That seems powerful. We can talk about that. Powell said, diving into the motions of painting Jesus without a plan or paintbrush and with her left hand has helped her let go of control and turn her artwork over to Christ because of her willingness to acknowledge the mess she is in. She feels a personal connection with the paintings and said each painting represents a prayer from her to Jesus. Each picture of Jesus that Powell has painted is different from the previous. She explained that this is because each prayer, mess, and limitation is different. BYU student Leah Thompson, who is majoring in art education, listened to Powell explain her process of finding Jesus in the mess, and Thompson said it suddenly made sense to her why Jesus looked so different in each painting. It made me think that all the different cultures look at Jesus a different way, so it makes sense that he looks different in all of her paintings, Thompson said. The exhibit is open to the public until December 3rd and is located on the second floor of Pioneer Book on Center Street in Provo. So I would give you the link to this, but it's kind of a long link. But if you just type um, that is BYU student finds joy in the mess in Jesus. Her name is Emmalee, Emmalee, last name Powell, Powell. So those give you some things to look it up. It's in universe.byu.edu and then a big long link. So
And I'm going to share a screenshot so you can see her art. I got that on Facebook. I just look while I was listening at the same time. So share screen so that let's see that there's her art. Yeah, right there. Tell me if you can see that, Jonathan. You see that okay?
yeah, no, it just came through. Yep.
Okay, so just keep in mind, she's doing this with a spoon, with sticks, and so forth. And you see the different pictures of Jesus like that. And excellent. So you read it through, and I like that. Now, Jonathan, if you can read it through again, and you and I can stop and comment upon this. I'm just going to leave this picture up for a while as we discuss this. Does that sound good?
I love the pictures, so I think that'll be really cool. People can look at them while we're talking about it. So I wish I could go there. I live in Utah. I wish I could go see it because there's so many I can't see that are hidden that
Well,
are underneath.
And that was when she was a student. I think she's a teacher now. When I Googled her, she probably teaches art. I wouldn't be surprised. And so, yeah, I wanted to reach out to her, which I still may do if Jesus puts it in my heart to it. But I guess we're reaching out to her right now. She's speaking to us from the dust.
It would be cool to if we could send her a link to our discussion afterwards, but who knows if you'll actually find a way to get through to her. But if you do, that'd be cool.
Yeah,
so
it'd be good to have her on Jesus TV. Okay, start reading because there was some really choice things that were being said there.
thought so too. All right, so BYU student and artist Emmalee Powell has combated the idea that Jesus is unreachable by battling through her desire to create the perfect image of Jesus by producing 340 abstract paintings of him instead.
Okay, so battling the idea that Jesus is unreachable, I like that to start with, is because first off, he's invisible. And it's like, so I feel like that sometimes and like unreachable. And so what is she doing? She's reaching out. And Christ says, seek me and I will seek you. Asking you shall receive, knocking it shall be open. So what I see her with these sticks, because today my focus when I woke up this morning was on tools. So she's using these tools to connect with Christ. I mean, this is the thing. So go ahead if you have any thoughts or carry on.
It's really good. What occurred to me, and this will come out more as we talk more about it, is that this is, I think, the amazing thing that that the concept of Jesus, and I should really say the reality of Christ, that it brings is the idea that it's like it takes us from the old world where the law was all important and it was a stringent, like one size fits all law, to this place where we don't really know what's good because it's like, I love the idea that there's like, okay, well, now I'm painting Jesus with a stick. Now I'm painting Jesus with a spoon. It's like, well, what is a good painting that's painted with a spoon? Well, that's very different than a painting painted with all the perfect paintbrushes. That would be like the old law. There's I'll share this quick experience. I have a friend, um, and he was severely abused as a child, and he is a Christian and he loves Jesus. The other day he stopped by and we were looking out the window, and he says, "Isn't it great to be free?" I said, "Yeah, it is great to be free." And and if you were to get to know him, you'd realize he's a very, very, very imperfect person. And the way that he worships Jesus is probably way different than other people worship Jesus. But he's also a very broken person. And the last thing that I wanted to share with that is that so he's blind in one eye, um, because during a severe beating when he was a child, he was rendered blind in one eye. And we walked into his little trailer that he lives in, his little motorhome one day, and he says, "Oh, turn on that other light." He said, "You don't realize that." He says, "When you're blind in one eye," he says, "you actually receive half the light. So everything looks darker because there's not as much light coming into your brain through your eyes." And I was like, whoa, that was so profound, because it's like, yeah, you can't judge somebody who's been spiritually damaged because they may not even be able to receive as much light. So it's like they can't paint a perfect picture with their lives. So I took too long to say all that. Let me read some more, and
No,
unless
it's
you have some.
no, it's great. And let's pause there, because I like to think of like the spoon or a straw, or she, I think she said painting with a fork, painting with fingers or thumb or glove, um, could be kind of a parable of the different kind of people we are. And some people are like paintbrushes, like they were meant for supreme worship. They've developed into this, and so when they paint, it's like, oh, look at that, that's perfection. Let's have them give the talk at church, and let's have them give the talk at conference, because we want people to aspire. And so that's what we do. Let's have the key athletes are going to show up at the NBA game. Let's not take the people who only have one leg and watch them play. I mean, we'll give them a forum, but let's not celebrate that. And I get it, but it's also um, leaves people feeling like Jesus is unreachable, because I can't paint my Savior like they can. I don't have the eloquent words, and so it's a good parable. And Emmalee, I like also um, kind of the what she's what she's doing is kind of like a living parable, and the parable to me is the desperate measures that she's reaching out with a spoon, reaching out with a fork, trying to touch Jesus, trying to see him. And so I'm combining that with what you're talking about, the amount of light that we can have. And so these different ways she's painting, that's fabulous and interesting, because then she's able to see um, the multitude of different ways. Anyhow, yeah, that's what I got there.
Thank you. Yeah, that's the idea. So I'll read some more. Let's see. Powell said that she has come to realize that Christ is most present in people's lives when they are in a state of disarray, whether it be physical, emotional, or mental. She used personally imposed limitations during the art creation process to show that Jesus is here for everyone, not just perfect people living in perfect circumstances. I just want to interject quickly there that I think I've realized, like, I can't wait until I'm perfect to serve God. And that's kind of the idea there, is it's like we have to start to serve him while we're still imperfect. That's something God showed me a long time ago, and that's what he loves. See, he loves the painting, like the child who's makes little scratches, and you can't tell what it looks like, but you say, "Oh, how wonderful," you know.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So the reaching out that we do, the worshiping of God, might look like a pittance, and yet God looks upon it and He goes like, you don't know where this person's been. They're reaching out, and this is the first time I've ever seen them pay attention to me. And if this is how they pay attention, I will receive it. And then someone who's maybe been worshiping God their whole life, then he doesn't want that. He wants your broken best. And so it's an interesting thought. I also liked that the start of that sentence that she has this sense, and it's a sense that God's been emphasizing in my life, is that it's necessary to suffer, to be under difficulties, to have weaknesses, and that's God uses those to draw us closer. And there's really no other way that He can do that, because otherwise we won't worship Him. Our attention will be elsewhere. And so I like that this episode is framed within suffer well, healed by His stripes. So Emmalee's acknowledging something that's very important in my life, is understanding that it's necessary to be under pressure in order to get closer to God. It's an opportunity.
yeah, thank you. That's good. That's good. Well, and it's surprising that that's what he wants. Like we have thought the idea that is that beauty and goodness looks like doing everything perfectly. And we realize as we get closer to God that He doesn't even view beauty the same way we do. You know, it's like He does not. Um, it's surprising for me to realize that He's not looking for me to be perfect, and that my attempts to be perfect are often take me away from Him. So really interesting, yeah, to think about that. But okay, so she explained that throughout the New Testament, Jesus is never where things are pretty and nice. He is always in hard, difficult situations. For example, the time He spent ministering to the woman who was caught in adultery was not a comfortable situation, but He was there for her regardless of the circumstances. He's with the people who need Him, and the people who need Him are in a mess,
Oh,
Powell said.
and I love that she uses that term mess, because the closer I get to Christ, I'm like, oh my goodness, what a mess. What a mess. The closer I get to Christ, it's just a mess. And then he said, let's use our words, Greg. And so then he has me use my words. I can be like a little child, but he'll say, use your words. And so, what do you mean, Greg? I say, well, the more truth you give me, the more ambiguous things become. The more I know, the less I understand. That's kind of messy. And then the closer I get to you and trust you, the more vulnerable you make me, the more messy my emotional life becomes. My my friendships, they become messy, awkward. And then on the other highway of truth and trust, and then there's commitment. The deeper I commit to God, the riskier it gets. I don't feel secure except in God. I'm like, well, this is going to take a miracle. He doesn't like encapsulate His disciples and His apostles in like some kind of cocoon. In fact, I was looking the other day, what happened to all His apostles that he went with on the earth? This one was hanged. This one was stoned. This one had his eyes gouged out. And it's like, is that the reward for being a deep Christian? The answer, sadly, to me anyways, is yes. He will take you to Golgotha with Him, or your approximation. And thankfully, I don't think that's going to happen to me, but I don't know. But I do know that all of us will have an approximation. It could be cancer, it could be losing our spouse and our children or something like that. And it'll hurt worse than death by far. And you're like, oh, I'd rather have my eyes gouged out. I'd rather be hung than to have this thing happen. And so back to the word mess, it's like, oh yeah, Jesus, it's messy. But you know what's messier? Babylon, Antichrist. You want to talk about a mess. So God works with matter unorganized. So if you look at these paintings that we have up, some of them are kind of messy. Notice like this one that's kind of in the red to my right. Like I wonder what she painted that with. What kind of person was that? Was that a spoon person? Was that a Kleenex, a dirty Kleenex person? Um, and and like some people are stuck. That's the gifts that they were given one talent. They can't express
You cut
them.
out for a little while
Oh,
there. I didn't think about the red painting after you said red
oh yeah,
painting.
I just saying, look at that red painting. It's a mess. And that some people, God gives them one talent, and what they can do compared to others is a real mess. And yet he expects us to paint, to connect with him, to imagine him, to look to him. And so that's my elaboration on her mess. I like the term, and it caught my attention when I read it, and when you read it.
Well, yeah, and I'll just say two little things about that, and then I'll go back to reading. But nature is a mess. It's kind of like abstract art. Um, it really is messy, and yet it's so gorgeous. You just can't know until nature's had its way for a while that it really is beautiful. And Christ's sacrifice really was a mess, because it's like everybody was expecting him to do one thing, and he did just something totally different. And it ended with this just bloodbath of just gore and of unfulfilled hopes. Everybody was, because even as apostles, the apostles were just like dumbfounded by what happened. It just they weren't expecting the mess that ended up this catastrophic ending. Like just. And yet, who would have guessed that? I mean, we can now, like we look backwards, but we don't understand what it would have been like at the time. And it was just obviously that it was just a mess. It was like, for all intensive purposes, the whole endeavor failed, and yet, so we have to trust God that way.
Yeah, and that's why people's expectations, like, okay, I'm going to go big on Jesus. I'm going to dive into this, and they might, like I say, or like Emmalee says, feel like God's unapproachable because they're a mess, or as they get closer to Christ, it becomes more messy. And I got to assure you, like Jonathan says, that's kind of the nature of life. And that in Babylon, US Antichrist Babylon, they're not transparent, so you don't see that. And I'm going to give you an example. It's a little deeper dive. When I went to graduate school, I had a class where the teacher talked about messy practice and the conventions of scientists. And what they'll do is when they're studying something, it's messy because reality has so many loose ends to it. So when you're gathering data, there's so many things that can go wrong in gathering data, and so you do the best you can, for instance, to make sure your surveys are worded right, that you're not biasing them, that people understand your instructions. Even if you do the best you can, there's still things that were unanticipated. So you get your data back and you're like, whoa, I'm finding some weird stuff here. And we forgot to do that. And so an honest researcher will put that inside their articles, their journal article, and that's called the limitations. And so they present their findings, they make some conclusions about what they're finding, but they'll also say, this study had some limitations. Half of the participants wouldn't fill out the form, so the ones that did participate, we kind of have to wonder if we've got a full spectrum of opinions here. And so, but but sometimes scientists like, oh, I'm not going to put that in there. There's so many loose ends. I'll mention this or that. And so what you get in a journal article is what you would get like at an LDS conference. It's been gone through carefully, uh, and everything that's messy gets cleaned up. And so improv is not kind of like and this is the nature not just of LDS conferences. It's the nature of formal systems. They clean up messy practice. Okay, so that's when if you go to a scientific journal article, what you're looking at is hidden. There's something you can't see, and that's the messy practice that led to what you're seeing. And if you went down into that messy practice, you'd say, oh, they made some decisions. For some reason, they decided not to say these things because maybe they would call into question. So there could be nefarious things. So that's true of the news. The news that you see on MSNBC or Fox News, they're leaving certain things out because maybe it doesn't follow the narrative. They're trying to say a certain narrative. So you can clean up a story by trimming off certain things. And sometimes by trimming them off, you make the thing look better or more convincing. And these are things that we do as humans. So when we go on our first dates, we might fail to mention certain things that maybe on our sixth date, we do what's called, we're more transparent and we're willing to share because we think, oh, this relationship is going somewhere. So things that were probably not appropriate or that would have spoiled the whole thing on the first date can be survived on the sixth date. But we live in a society that moves pretty fast. And so organizations, institutions, especially formal institutions, they get very good at massaging things so that you can trust. So when you go to your doctor, it looks like you're talking to God, that he knows exactly what's wrong with you and he doesn't tell you the truth. Inside his head is like, I'm not sure what's going on here. We're going to try some things. And some doctors are more transparent than others. And so real life, anybody knows, life is pretty messy, but we doll ourselves up, put on makeup or put on a tie. We show up with our hair combed, hopefully, and hide our messy practice, our normal day-to-day things for the sake of holding trust together. Because some people, if their doctor looked disheveled, he might be the best doctor in the world, but if he has bad breath, bad bedside manner, the only way you're going to stay with that doctor is if he has skills that you're aware of, that he's the only one that could actually take care of you, he or she. And so we do tolerate messy practice, and anybody who's in a marriage or in a relationship knows it gets messy. Well, let me see if I can conclude that thought. One, it's about transparency. So you see, right, these paintings you're looking at on the share screen. You know, I like them because I like abstract art, but some of them look kind of bad. You know, from perspective of compare that to paintings of Christ you would see hang in the temple or at church. They wouldn't hang these. They're too abstract. Abstract can mean you know, you can have a messy face. You can have chalk lines. You can have you know, images that looks like somebody painted them with a spoon. Well, they did. And so having tolerance for that in a formal system where you're trying to please everybody, like, and kind of keep it G-rated, then what happens is these kind of paintings get squoze out. And what you have instead are a much narrower band of what is acceptable. And that can exude. You don't intend it to, but in formal institutions, it can start exuding expectations that if you can't live up to this or that, and now I'm using, like, you know, commandments or whatever, and present yourself in a certain way, then we're not going to say this openly, but we're going to imply it with our culture that you're really not up to snuff, and you'll kind of feel that way. And some institutions can make you feel that way. They can make you feel stupid. They can make you feel unrighteous, that maybe you shouldn't be here. And the institution's like, well, no, we didn't mean to do that. I know you didn't mean to do that, but um, the way in which we organize ourselves can be more or less inviting. So I've been to homes that are like a lot of mess. Okay. It's like, and it's actually quite comfortable because I'm not going to break anything. And if I broke something, it's not a big deal. So I've got some friends who live low and they have a lot of love in their home, but it's kind of messy. They've got writing on the wall. They've got socks strewn here and there. But what did I just say? There's a lot of love in the home. You can sit down on that couch. But for a lot of other people, that wouldn't be inviting. They're like, oh yeah. In fact, some people would never show their home like that, and and so um, unintentionally, our formal systems can exclude certain people from self judgments that are self pleasing because they feel like they're not measuring up. And the truth is, they're not measuring up to some standard that maybe it's not Jesus's standard. Maybe he likes these paintings that are like this. Um, but anyhow, I'm just introducing, I'm not bringing resolution to all those things, but I, uh, I think about those things a lot because um, I agree that the scriptures seem to indicate that Jesus works with a lot of messy people and willingly and happily, that he's happy to have people that are otherwise despised by the formal culture, by the accepted, by the Jesus used the manger scene and the innkeepers. So the innkeepers, Jesus typified as those are the important people in your society, Greg. They're the people who are in style. They are the people who are in control. They're the in crowd. Those are the innkeepers. And he says, I'm there with them and I love them. And so he doesn't hate formal. In fact, he's very formal. I bet you went to heaven like, oh, this isn't messy. What are you talking about, Greg? Right. I get it. He wants to formalize a lot of things, but he also, on the other side, wants us to have a place in our heart for something that's really messy, all the way to down to where you'd say, here is matter unorganized. Let us go down and see if we can organize this in a manner we've done before and see if we can raise this intelligence up and up like you would. Here's a cow pie. Let's see if we can use this for a good purpose rather than just to be stinky. And it turns into a wonderful fertilizer for a seed or something. And so it is the pattern, and it's a pattern that God has put into my heart. And when I got born again, he said, you belong in the manger scene. That's your dominant scene. So you're not with the cool people. You're not with the in style people. You are to love the in style people, the in control, the ones who are in control of institutions within your society, the ones who are part of the in group. You are to love them. But they will not love you back with the same love. So he set those expectations because there's no room for you in the end, Greg. And that's, of course, what Jesus's experience was. So the manger scene, and I'll end with this. What's the manger scene like? It's a mess. A relative to the innkeepers, staying in the stable. Which do you want, to stay in the Marriott or in the stable behind the Marriott? Well, hello, even me, I'd like to stay in the Marriott with beds and so forth, not sleeping on a straw bale. But metaphorically, I'm called to sleep on the straw bale and to smell manure and to be with outcasts, misfits. Those are my people. Not be there and go like, oh, I've come here to help you. No, that's who you are, Greg. And I've had to learn to accept that. And so if I painted pictures, I think she does great work here. I look at this like, it looks good to me. But that's kind of the pictures I would do. Jesus has me do t-shirts. Guess which one, how he has me do them? I pick up a magic marker and Jesus shows me what he wants me to write on a shirt. So my shirts are kind of disturbing to people. Like these pictures might be to certain people. Jonathan was disturbed by when he first met me, by my Jesus shirt. He thought it was an indicator that maybe I was a little bit mentally ill, and he was right. I'm actually more than a little mentally ill. Uh, I'm Jesus crazy. Okay, I'll leave it with that mess. Thank you.
Yeah. So, okay, I'll read a little bit more and then see what thoughts we have. So, um, all right. So he's with people who need him, and the people who need him are in a mess, Powell said. Powell used to be a realistic portrait painter and had always wanted to paint Jesus, but didn't know what he
Oh,
really looked.
okay. I'm gonna have to. I just want to make one more thing clear to myself, I guess. This is what I've been trying to learn to accept. So I go around preaching as a street preacher, getting more Jesus, and what she just said, or the articles said, is so true. That people who aren't in a mess, so we can talk about hot messes, because there's different seasons of one's life. So sometimes things are rolling pretty good. For right now, for instance, in U.S. Antichrist Babylon, despite its little hiccups and so forth, it's rolling thunder. It's working very, very, very well. Well, that doesn't leave a big opening for Jesus. I will tell you, it's like Emmalee knows. When things are working well, what did Jesus say? The well have no need of a physician. So if you're well, the righteous have no need of of a savior. And so that's been the nature of like the European Union, all those countries. They're very hard to preach the gospel to because the Bible, we have a Bible. They've been doing okay because God has blessed them so that they have stable economies, stable banking. All they have to do is go to work. They don't need any big, huge religious change. But of course, if you got eyes to see, the world is changing, and that's going to change for some people. Some people will still resist Lord even when their life's a mess. But that's what God's been emphasizing. And do you agree, Jonathan, that generally people, to use that term, when their life's not a mess and it's going pretty smooth, no, my life's not a mess, then your need for an invisible God for miracles is less, if not non-existent.
And so I think, well, I think the amazing thing is that she's able to paint with with so little, with a spoon or with I look at the pictures and I really like them. Um, but I also am kind of an artistic person. I artistic people tend to like things like that. They'll look at an abstract painting. There's some abstract art I can't stand, but there's some of it that's really beautiful.
I
So,
like it too.
but it's kind of interesting to me that um, yeah, and I think she goes into that a little bit more as we go down, as we read a little bit more. But it's it's the way that we can connect with God in this world. Now, the idea is God wants to raise this world up, um, but it's like, say she's painting a picture with a cow pie, and getting it all wet and painting with wet poop. It's like, well, that's great, and you think, well, that's a mess. But what strikes me is how many of those pictures you can still recognize that it's Christ. And so it's like, a cow pie is far more exalted when it reflects Christ. So it's an improvement. And who knows what the next generation of cow pie painters and sculptors will produce. And maybe, they'll be elevated to the point where they're now painting out of mud, and now they're painting out of real paints, and now they're not using a stick, and maybe we'll all be using paintbrushes. So God is trying to lift us up. But it doesn't, it's that old, it's a kind of an Eastern idea that it's like, it's not just the end that we're after. You know, it's the old thing of it's the journey and not the destination. Well, the truth is it's probably the journey and the destination. You know, it's like, do we want perfection? Do we want beauty? Yes. But we don't have to wait till the end of the road to have it. In other words, we can make the painting that we can make today in our mess, and tomorrow it's not going to be as much of a mess if we're moving towards Christ, and maybe we'll make a better painting. Eventually, it'll all be perfect and beautiful, but we can enjoy um, that all the way along. I'm
I
going to read a
like
little
it.
bit.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Let me read a little bit more because I think she goes into more of it. So, and then
Yeah,
we'll some more. So,
yeah, go ahead.
Powell used to be a realistic portrait painter and had always wanted to paint Jesus, but didn't know what he really looked like. Through her desire to paint him, she realized that no painting she ever attempted of him would be perfect. Because of this, she decided to purposely give herself limitations by using only her non-dominant hand, not using a paintbrush, and not planning how the picture would look. Powell's pictures have been created using paper towels, spoons, forks, pocket knives, carving tools, and sticks. She'll reach for anything but a paintbrush when it comes to painting Jesus. The exhibit, this next part I really like, and maybe we'll have some comments on this.
Well,
The,
let me insert here. If somebody wanted to understand what I've been doing with Jesus since 2015, this starts getting close to it, because how I worship Jesus, it's like, I mean, she kind of had a plan, right? Okay, I'm going to stop using paintbrushes. I can do this. She moved to a more informal style of painting. That's what most people would call it. Oh, you moved to a more informal. Paintbrushes are formal, like Jonathan says. She kind of moved back towards prehistoric times. Get a piece of charcoal out of the fire pit and draw yourself a cow that looks like, to us, a square with some sticks, and call it a cow. So she moved towards that. I mean, I can see these paintings are more than that. But I too, when I was born again, because Jesus was trying to draw me into because I'm an intellectual, is my gift, but it's also my weakness. So I needed to be brought to a more emotional, and this was kind of sometimes what the abstract art can do, because it has to focus. Like she said, she was doing realism, and then she had to go somewhere where you have more of an emotional response, I would say, because otherwise, what's the purpose? But that's that's it's about as best I can express right now. There's a connection, and I knew that when Jesus led me to this article. This was a couple years ago. I intuitively knew that that's what he's doing, and it's a hard thing to explain. Greg, why would you do this and that? Because a lot of the things that I do look like they could be sacrilegious. Jesus TV. Oh, well, you say, well, why doesn't the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints have a Jesus TV? And then people say, well, they kind of do. Well, then why don't they call it Jesus TV? Well, it doesn't fit culturally, and so I've moved to a more informal worship style, personal worship style. And anyways, there's my connection.
cool. Yeah, yep, I get it. Sorry, let me find my place real quick. So the exhibit is an interactive experience for viewers. Powell lays small paintings of Jesus on a table and asks viewers to pick up the painting that they feel best fits the mess in their lives, then write one or two words on the back that describe the mess. For Powell, the action of having observers interact with the art communicates that the idea that Jesus is untouchable is false. BYU art student Austin Carter experienced the art for himself. It's not what I expected. All the paintings are different, and each face of Jesus provokes a different emotion, Carter said. Emotions are what Powell said drives her artwork. When she is stressed, overwhelmed, or doesn't know where to start, she strives to find.
Hey, Jonathan. That's unmute.
Okay, the next paragraph, I kind of, there's a separate.
Read that last two sentences. I accidentally unmuted you or something. Go ahead and read that last 2 seconds.
So emotions are what Powell said drives her artwork. When she is stressed, overwhelmed, or doesn't know where to start, she strives to find Jesus through prayer. I was just going to say that I really like that she has people write stuff on the back. Artwork has always been so, it's new artwork. I've never, you know, I've never bought much artwork ever, even prints. I've had a few things on my wall a few times, but I love artwork. But it was always untouchable for me in the sense of, I can't pay the high premiums for original art, and I've often been poor. I haven't been able to afford even the prints of things sometimes, and so, but I do love artwork. So I love it that she's allowing people to actually touch and handle the paintings, so it becomes something that's not just her, it's them, and people are able to look and go, well, this painting most describes, and I have this feeling like it's going to be more valuable afterwards. It's, in a sense, you could say, by letting people write all over the back of it, it makes it even more messy. But for me, in my mind, that makes it even more real. And maybe that's where we're going in the world today, because it's like when somebody, like, we're going to put this out, and allow people to put comments, on the video down below, and it becomes not just about the thing produced, but also the people's reaction to it. It's more organic, maybe. Go ahead.
Your video went down. If you have to turn that back on.
Oops.
There
Sorry,
you
my
go.
bad.
We see your beautiful face. Yeah. I thought once again of that friend I have that he writes poetry on the walls of his house. His house generally was what people would call a mess. But they have lots of kids, and their energies are always spent just trying to feed the kids and take care of things. So, and they're artistic, so they and philosophers. So it's when your energies are spent doing one thing, oftentimes you're not painting walls or sweeping floors. Instead, you're making food for the next meal, at least for them. And that I love going in that home and seeing that that they're writing upon the walls, and that's what you just said. It's approaching things differently than the traditional world, and making some things more accessible. And what it reminds me of is our obligation, our actually covenant obligation, to always remember Christ. So a lot of things I do, all my Facebook posts are about one thing. It's actually one who. It's Jesus. If it doesn't have to do with Jesus, it's just one thing. And I'm not doing that because I think, oh, everybody needs my testimony. I'm doing that because it keeps me focused on the one that I need, and the one is Christ. And so, and hence Jesus TV, and converting all my energy as an extrovert towards, well, if you're going to extrovert, because extroverts will extrovert, let's do it towards that which you love the most and that which is most worth your time. And that's where Christ has led me. And so putting mementos, putting altars in front of us that can remind us of Christ, of those things that matter most, and then making them accessible so that we run into them almost all the time. Anyways, that resonates with me.
Well, I'll just mention this. My experience has been that it's like that God actually makes us into something, and that's different than the world, and that's different than it's that comment probably doesn't make a lot of sense, but I'll just try to briefly describe it and then I'll move on. But basically, it seems like God actually intends to fully make us into something. Um, I love authentic people, because when you encounter an authentic person, it's like, they are fully whatever the thing is that they are. And whenever you fully become kind of what you are, it's like it's impossible to be something else. It's like the mad scientist in his basement who, like you know he when it is what he is, what's that old movie? There was like, oh, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, where the inventor, um, it's like, yeah, he could go down and try to get a job at the post office, but it would literally destroy him because he has been made into something in particular. He's an inventor.
Yeah,
And
yeah, that's right. It'd be hard for Elon Musk to go be a Walmart greeter, and
no,
and it totally sounds like what Jesus would have him do if he became born again Christian. Jesus say, "Okay, now I want you to give up SpaceX, Tesla, boring company, go sell everything you have to the poor, and now go be a Walmart greeter." And because that's what I've worried. Like Jesus would not use my gifts. He'd just say, "Totally, I just want you to go do one of these jobs." And when I got born again, he made me a handyman. That was about as close to it because I'm in my 50s. Pick up a shovel. Let's go cut trees. I don't know how to do this, Lord. And so he will do an approximation of that as you get closer to him. Are you willing to not do your gift for a time and sometimes for a long time? Uh, and my answer to him was, yeah, whatever you want me to do. And so, yeah, amen to your comment that it's good when people can be authentic to who they are, and um, Christ is the one who knows how to do that so that you are most authentic. Uh, you know, um, he's the one that knew you before you were born. So you can try to be authentic and transparent, but only Christ can complete that job, give you a fullness of authenticity, and it often takes you in directions that you did not expect. I thought this was my
hey,
authentic self. Yeah, go ahead.
sorry, I think I cut out for a second because I think you didn't hear the last part of something I was saying.
Okay,
Um,
continue.
cut back. No, it's okay. I realized because you started talking and it was in the middle of when I was talking, and I was like, oh, I think I must have cut out.
Technical difficulties.
Yeah. No, what I was going to say about the whole mess thing is and what I wonder is if the version of ourselves that's in Christ's image is similar to what we would be without. Like I think Elon Musk, if he were to God were to take him on some sort of a journey, he would still have many of the same interests. Like when I was young, I was going to major in music. Again, it's not exactly what I am now, but it's similar. But there's key differences, and the devil's in the details. Virtue resides in minute particulars. And so what I think I was getting at with the people is just that I'm surprised at how people, I'm surprised at how people who are really authentic, um, oftentimes they are amazing in this one area and a real blessing, or they have this real gift and then they're just a mess everywhere else.
Oh, that's a great observation. Yeah, my recent observation was that very thing. Just a second, I'm gonna stop my
This is,
video. Say again, Jonathan. Uh, can't hear you. Let's see.
uh-oh.
Okay, you're
Should
back.
I turn off?
No, nope. You can keep yours on. I'm gonna keep mine off. I think that that's a combo that works. So go ahead.
Let me know if okay. So most of this is all about getting started when you're stuck in a moment of indecision, Powell said. Um, so I'm going to read the next paragraph, but I want to make a comment about that. I'm not sure if the next one talks about it. So Powell said, diving into the motions of painting Jesus without a plan or paintbrush, and with her left hand has helped her let go of control and turn her work over to Christ. Because of her willingness to acknowledge the mess she is in, she feels a personal connection with the paintings and said each painting represents a prayer from her to Jesus. So I think the reason that I really like that first little paragraph there. Most of this is about getting started when you're stuck in a moment of indecision. Um, I've I think the reason that resonates with me is because it has been one of my great faults or weaknesses in life, that the fault of being indecisive. Um, I remember being a small child and standing in front of the candy bar aisle for like a half an hour trying to decide which one I wanted, because if I chose the one, I couldn't choose the other, you know.
That's right.
And so I've spent much of my life kind of a place of standing back, and I'm the kind of person too. I'm always curious about new things, and so the minute that I settle down to one thing, that means I can't do something else. And my you could say I realized years later, you know, like I took a personality test and they said, oh yeah, everybody who has your personality type is like this, you know. But it's like they
Right.
say that people like don't really get started on any sort of a career till they're in their 40s, because um, it takes so long to to decide what they want and to fully like the same. Who is it? Mr. Rogers is the same personality type as me. And he didn't get really started till he was in his, I think, mid to late 40s, with, you know, his program, because he was investigating so many things, and then they all kind of came together. So the point being is like, but I love this idea that it's like, it's, she says it's about getting stuck in the, or getting started in a moment of indecision. And I kind of wonder if that's like, I have a sense like if I could, there's a few gifts I would give the world. Um, if I could give the world some gifts, and one of them I think would be something like that. It's like, and I think my road of faith, you know, the strange road I've walked down of stepping out in faith, um, and I've had people find fault with me as I've stepped out in faith, because it's appeared that things went poorly when I did, and they're right, they did go poorly. But the strange thing is that it's like the I don't even know how to put it other than that it's like the only way that we progress toward the divine is to step forward, step forward, step forward, step forward in the midst of our mess. She says it's a way to get going when you're in a moment of indecision. Um, and you know, I'm really good at jumping off cliffs. Um, and over time, God's curbed that, and He's made it so it's like, just wait, just be patient, you know. And so by doing that, I learned something. But um, so yeah, I just wanted to throw that in.
Yeah, that's
Do you have a
good. I like
go
it.
on?
Yep, I like it. The indecisions, and um, how long halt ye? Even the decision to go big on Jesus, you can halt even with a lot of pain. Um, and I've got somebody special in my life right now, and that's what my encouragement was to her: is come on, go all in, because I knew what you're going to suffer until you do, and even when you do, you're still going to suffer. That's what we've been emphasizing on suffer well. It's like, but here's the thing: you're going to suffer better, because Jesus has promised that He will take your pains in ways that you don't understand. So He offers a peace that surpasses understanding. So you're like, I don't know why I'm feeling better, because the same mess prevails. He did not take away all of my mess, but He's using my weakness to perfect me. And that's one of the scriptures that Paul uses, and it's in the Book of Mormon as well, that God gives unto men weakness. And so weakness, of course, could easily be experienced as a mess. My life is a mess. Hallelujah, Paul would say. I'm perfected in my weakness. And there's only one way that he was perfected in his weakness. It took him to Christ. When Christ said, blessed are the poor in spirit. In other words, he could have said, blessed are the messed up people who
Yeah.
come unto me. He didn't say, blessed are the messed up people who, go with the way of the world. Nope. He said, who come unto me, meaning that they bring their focus to Christ. So if you get bit by a serpent, like the children of Israel,
Yeah.
blessed are you. You're in a mess. You're in a messy state. You're going to die, except if you look up at this staff. Well, that's weird. That's not how you heal yourself from snakes. That's everybody knows, because we've lived in the wilderness long enough. That's weird. No, not going to do it. All you got to do is look. Nope, not going to do it. And it's like, wow, we like sheep, and so we have resistance, and that's what we have to work with. But we don't have to get discouraged. We can just go, God, I've got this weakness, and it's keeping me away from you. You express that out loud, and I want you to come fix it. Um, if you mean it, he'll come, and do it. And sometimes by creating a bigger mess, so that then he can scale it back. Oh, it's feeling so much better, because I took you up to level 100. You were content at lukewarm. Your life was a mess at 50%, but I took you up to 100. Now I'm back, bringing you back to 50. Wow. And that's the nature of special ops training. You push them into a limit of breaking, nearly death, and then you back off. And people build, because the human body and mind will develop tolerances, and build resilience. And so we live in a society where you just try to avoid as much pain, and you've got scientists working on that. How can we make better meds so that these meds that we made, these opioids, but let's just keep working on it so we can take, because people are in pain and we care so much about that. And it's not like, how can we get more Jesus in them? There is some of that, or approximations like meditation, but that's not how you make money. So the big formal, once again, formal institutions are big on things that are big in society. And you know what's big in society? The bottom line. Oh, now you're getting to it, Greg. And what's the bottom line called in our society? Money. And Jonathan and I are going to beg for money. So that's the bottom line too. Into this episode, we're going to ask for 50 cents. So yes, we're aware of what the bottom line is, but God knows that there's one way to clean this up, and that is to put you in a bigger mess, so that you're overwhelmed. You're like, oh, we can't fix this. We thought we were going to be able to fix this. We can't. And you're either going to have misery and despair, or you're going to turn to an alternative source, like that some people would call non-existent, but it'll be prayer, fasting, turning to God, intuition, call it what you want. And that's where Jonathan and I have been through our sufferings. That's why we're on Jesus TV and not on another TV program trying to hawk you goods or something. But okay, Jonathan, that's all I got there.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. So I'm going to make one short comment. I glanced up and noticed the last sentence of the last paragraph I wrote or I read, and I just have a quick comment about that, and then I'll read the rest, because we're getting pretty close to the end of the article. She said that each of her paintings represented a prayer from her to Jesus, and it made me reflect. I mentioned before all those leaps that I've made, those steps of faith that I've taken, which have often not been understood by people around me. And I realized, oh, yeah, I think I get it, because for me, each of those steps for me was a prayer.
Yes.
Um, it's like, and you say, well, yeah, but it didn't look so good. Right. Because I didn't wait until I could make a perfect step to step. Does that make sense? So it's like what does Christ say? He wants us to come to him, right?
Yep.
Um, and he doesn't say wait till you're perfect to come to me. And so what does that mean? Well, what that means is that you're going to get it wrong. Okay. So like you're going to take a step and believing that you're stepping towards Jesus, and it's not really towards Jesus, but it is, but it isn't. But it is because your intent is to move towards Jesus. But you find out after you take the step that, oh, I was wrong. I was mistaken, that, if I could do it again, I would do it differently. Well, of course you would. But he counts it. I'm amazed that he counts it as a step towards him, and it helps us to actually come to him. That's what faith is about. And that's, as you read through the scriptures, when it talks about faith over and over again, I'll finish up with this, but that's really what it's talking about. And it's talking about it over and over again, that we're not saved by the works of the law, we're saved by our faith. And well, how do we exercise faith? Well, by 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 painting the darn painting with whatever you've got today. So, all right. Each picture of Jesus that Powell has painted is different from the previous. She explained that this is because each prayer, mess, and limitation is different. BYU student Leah Thompson, who is majoring in art education, listened to Powell explain her process of finding Jesus in the mess, and Thompson said it suddenly made sense to her why Jesus looked so different in each painting. It made me think that all the different cultures look at Jesus a different way, so it makes sense that he looks different in all their paintings, Thompson said. The exhibit is open to the public until December 3rd and is located on the second floor of Pioneer Book on Center Street in Provo. So I'll just make a quick comment about this, what this girl said, and the different cultures. I think I used to be more of the view that it's so important to get it right. Like, well, but Jesus looked a certain way. And I've changed a lot in that over the last decade or two. It's like I've gone from a place of believing that it was so important to get everything right, um, and to see him clearly for who he is, to understanding that it's something a little bit different than what I thought. And I think this girl that was the art student kind of got a grasp of that. It's like, I always wondered that, like, well, why would you paint a picture of Jesus, where, he looks like your culture and not like the culture that he grew up in, Um, and, it felt like it was um, ahistoric, but I think it shows how unartistic I became for a period of my life. You know, it's that kind of a statement is so not like an artist. Um, and and the point is that it's like, if Christ had been born in a different culture, if he'd been born in the Orient, he would look like an Oriental person. If he'd been born in Africa, he'd look like an African person. If he'd been born in, the United States of America in 2020, he would look something different. And depending on what part of America and what family he came from. And I wonder if that is another message in a sense. It's like he was half human, which means um, he uh, he looks different to the different people. And I guess I don't. We've already hit on this to some extent, and I'll end my comment here quickly. But I'm struck by the fact that on the road to Emmaus, when he appeared to the two men on the road to Emmaus, they didn't recognize him. And these were people who knew everything that was going on in Jerusalem. So it's like he did not appear the way he had appeared. And so that tells us a little bit about the reality of Christ now that he's entered into the eternal world. He is no longer bound by the culture that he was born into in 2,000 years ago. he's no longer bound by that. He can show up in a way in our lives, just like he did for the men on the road to Emmaus, in a way that we can understand and in a way that we can relate to. And that was, I think, my comment.
Yeah, and I liked that Emmalee Powell's using all these different tools. So when I woke up this morning, Jesus was talking to me about tools, and that he's giving me various tools that help me get more Jesus, because that's kind of like my prime directive. When I got born again, he says, Greg, you've always had Jesus. What you need is more Jesus. And so at www.getmorejesus.com, he started building a world with me, a world of tools. Basically, the world itself, the Jesus Greg world, is a tool. It's an organizing tool, but it's built of all these different separate tools. And so when I see her using these different tools, these are kind of like Jesus tools, because they're going to be used for a purpose that's Jesus related. And so that's oftentimes how I frame this. So he's like, why do you call this Jesus TV? It's a tool, and it's actually one of the first ones you come at that website. And so this morning I edited that to reflect that immediately, that that's what you're looking at. You're looking at a tool, and what's its purpose? To get more Jesus. And how do you do that? Well, we're going to build a new culture, and that culture is based on looking to Christ more often. And when you look to Christ, you're going to think of Christ. And then you're going to get into 2 Nephi 25:26. Those who think of Christ also talk of Christ. And then you do what we're doing on Jesus TV. You preach of Christ, and you might blend that preaching of Christ with art, like we're doing with Emmalee Powell. So I thank her and Jesus for providing us a forum of information. So this is kind of a turn of events that Jonathan and I are now managing. We both realized that we like bringing in a fourth person. There's Jesus, Jonathan, and Greg, and then a fourth person. Sometimes that'll be an artist. Sometimes it'll be Emmalee Powell. Sometimes it won't be a person at all. It might just be an article, but written by somebody, maybe a reflection, maybe it'll be a concept. So I just want to signal at this point in our program that. Do you have any comments before we beg for money, Jonathan?
I have one last comment, and that is that you're talking about, like, your website is Get More Jesus. I think what people will find, and maybe this is why I'm involved with this, is that it's like, strangely, what I've gotten more of the divine, and I see Christ as standing in that place, as a member of the Godhead, and as my Savior, and yet I don't have a website that says Get More Jesus. I have a website that says something a little bit different. What I think people will find, like I said, I think this may be why I'm part of the program too, is that it's like there are people who are listening who they're not really after more Jesus. They're after more peace, let's say,
Yep.
or they're in desperate need of more stability, or they're in desperate need of heck, they might be in desperate need of more money, or they might be in desperate need of
Truth.
think of any. What's that?
Truth.
Truth, yeah, a desperate need of more truth and understanding. It's like each person is going to come at what we're talking about from a different need. I know for me, for years, I had great financial responsibilities, and when I kind of broke back in around 2012, 2013, I was just scrambling in any way to get answers. And I read a few self-help books, but the principal place where I turned was to God for the answers. And it's been a long process, but it's like I have come to Him by seeking the answers to my deep soul questions. One of them had to do, strangely, about providing, and we've talked about some of the other things that I've had need of. And so it's like, it'll be interesting. I just wanted to give the kind of the other side of that. It's like, for some people listening, as you hear Greg and he's talking about get more Jesus, I want to round that out a little bit in the sense that it's like what we're all seeking for is the thing which we desperately need. And the thing that rounds it out, I think, is that we find that in the divine. We find that in Jesus. We find that in God. We find that in that still small voice. And I wonder if that's the principal difference. And the thing that we're going to find in common as people listen is that it's like we may all be seeking for different desperate needs in our lives. But we end up discovering that it all comes from the same place. It comes from the heavens down to us. And if you guys can be patient with us and understand that Greg and I speak a different language, but if you can just interpret and be like, okay, oh, when Greg says get more Jesus, he's really speaking to me, and that thing that I'm just seeking for peace.
Yes.
It's when Jonathan talks about the way to acquire more truth. It's like he's really just talking about how we get more Jesus, or how we get more enlightenment, someone might say. It's like, because we're going to have charity for each other. Those of us who are participating in this movement, we are all coming from such different places and such different needs that it's like we're going to have to listen, and we're going to have to use the Google interpreter, but it's a divine interpreter that allows us to have charity for each other and go, oh, I get what they're talking about, even though they're not speaking perfectly my language. I'm going to take it in the best, okay, I get it, that's my last comment. And then we can beg. So
yeah, I like it. Okay, so I'm going to share. Let's see, go to share my screen. Share the screen. We'll get Emmalee's. Let's see, is this the one? I think the preview. That's the one. Okay. You'll have to tell me what you see. You see the preview, and so I wonder. I probably can't go straight from here. No, let me pull up. Let me pull up what I need here. 50 cents. Yes. Okay. So you don't see the 50 cents thing. You see Emmalee's pictures. Is that right? You're muted or something. Okay.
I see the pictures.
Okay. So I'm going to do the share again. Let's see. Hide view. Let's see. Oh, stop share here. Okay. Stop share. And then share again. Share screen. Okay, so here's our advertisement picture. Not too fancy, but not terrible mess. Come feed the little birds. Show them you care. And you'll be glad if you do. Their young ones are hungry. Their nests are so bare. All it takes is tuppence from you. Okay, so Jonathan and I, we are using our gifts to feed the birds. And so anyone listening to us right now, you're the birds and we're moving our vocal cords and continually praying to God that we might say the things as it comes out of our mouth. And this is what we want to do for the rest of our lives. Is Jesus TV or some approximation of it. That's what our hearts say right now. So we're all in on this. And that is our intention, is to feed the little birds. And we ourselves are birds, so we eat. Jonathan McCormick, you can send him on Venmo. His username is the Trackless Path there. His PayPal is the tracklesspath@gmail.com. Greg Muller, that's me. Go Muller, GOMULLER. And then my PayPal is gomuller@gmail. Tell you about these 2 quarters. So, and this little ad's called 50 cents tuppence. And the first quarter that you send us is to reinvest, that our intention is to find other birds who need this. And so our commitment to you and to Christ is that anything that's sent to us we are going to use that to we're doing a Google search. And I was going to ask you, Jonathan, are you using the YouTube tool? Is that what you're using to reach out, or is it the Google ads?
So I'm going to experiment over time. The first ad I did was this last week, and it was a YouTube ad. And I took a piece of content that I had created, a story I wrote, and I had $5, and so I ran an ad, a $5 ad. I got 27 views, and two people watched it all the way through. So you could say there were two people who actually fully resonated with what I shared.
They ate the
So
crumbs.
yeah, they ate the crumbs. Yeah, so they were birds. People seeking for the thing that you and I are both seeking for. So yeah, so one yeah, and so yeah, you're about to explain how
Yeah,
basically that
yeah.
we're
So
gonna, we may get a little bit, but we're gonna try to invest like half of what we get into yeah, something like that. So
yeah, and so Jonathan sent me $5, and I will do that sometime this week. I'm going to do the same thing, promote a video, and see if there's more people who can watch it. So if you found value in this video, you're like, oh, okay, I want to promote that. I'd like other people to hear this whom I don't even know. So it's a step of faith with that first quarter. The second quarter, that feeds us. That we've spent what, I don't know, it could be 2 hours here, and we're not earning money for our family. So a lot of things that are normally done is during the daytime, people are earning money and then it goes to their family. Jonathan and I are actually stepping out on that cliff, and I've been doing that. Jonathan's been doing that for quite some time. It's like traveling without purse or script, and God has provided. In fact, I've got some stuff somebody donated to me that I'll sell today for real cheap. It's going to be like a beautiful couch. There's a beautiful thing. I'm not trying to make a lot of money. I'm just trying to have toilet paper. And what else do we need at the house? Yeah, we were just fixing our wood stove so that it wasn't smoky in the house. So and Jonathan has some expenses as well. He lives in Arizona in a van, and he's got a family that he's caring for, and has a generator, and so we have these normal expenses. So that's what the other quarter is, and to emphasize, we don't want to make any promises we can't keep. So that's our general intent right now. That's our business plan, if you will, subject to revision as we hear the Lord. Now, let me talk you through just one more thing. When we say 50 cents, we mean 50 cents. I mean, if the Lord tells you to send more, that's fine. That's between you and the Lord. But our intent is actually, because this is what God has put in our heart, is to ask for 50 cents and mean a real 50 cents. So I guess it'd be $1 if you felt to send 50 cents to Jonathan and then 50 cents to me. But whoever receives the money, they'll decide what to do with that. If it's Jonathan or me, or if you say, oh, I'm going to spend a whole $1 today. But it frees both Jonathan and I, because we feel inside our hearts that's the number that we feel comfortable hawking right now. It's like I feel perfectly comfortable, because I'm asking for basically your bread crumbs, not your piece of bread. I don't need a piece of bread. Do you have any crumbs after you ate that sandwich? Can you just scoop them over here and put them in a little baggie, 25 cents, 50 cents worth of crumbs? Send them my way, and I'm going to feed some of these birds with half the crumbs. Then I'm going to eat the rest myself. Well, you're going to die if you, right. But don't think of me as the big bird that I am. Think of me as a little teeny bird that I'll be okay today, especially because I'm having God take care of me. And so just as we were talking about this before this episode, I said, I like this business plan that God has given us in terms of gathering money, because it kind of fits my personality. It's like if you're eating, hey guys, if you're eating an apple, just bag up the core if you weren't going to eat it and send it my way. I'll eat the seeds and the stem, and it'll still provide me sustenance. So go dumpster diving. See if you got anything in there. You got $1. Okay, well, send 50 cents to Jonathan, send 50 cents to me, and it will make a difference. We're living so low that we are like birds, and it can make a big difference in our lives and keep this train rolling. But this train will keep rolling as long as God wants it to. That's our faith. Anything
Yeah,
else?
very good. Oh, that's great. I feel so good about this. It's like we're doing it. It's the second time we've talked about it, and still I feel no reservations. I feel happy. And, if we keep doing this, if people just threw a little change in now and then, I have the feeling that somehow God will multiply it and we'll be okay. We'll be good. So I'm real happy.
Me too. Me too. And that's a good sign in one's soul. So, all right. Well, we're going to end this episode. We're glad that you could join with us in worshiping Christ. Worship means to bring attention to, and that's what our attention has been this whole thing. We're so thankful for Emmalee and the work she's done with Jesus, and it touches my heart, and it makes me want to reach out to Emmalee. We're gonna, let's see. So I'm gonna stop this. Jonathan and I'll talk for just a second after I finish this. Okay, stop the share, then I can hit this end. There we go. And meeting for all.